Good day, and welcome to the Budding Entrepreneur Podcast. I'm your host, Randy Bridges. In each episode, I cover my experiences, both good and bad, of being a business builder, as well as my journey through the crazy world of entrepreneurship to reach my goal of earning $10 million a year. All right. We are on episode 138 of the podcast. Today is March the 7th, 2024. That makes it the first official week of the month, which means we flipped over to a new topic. And this month's topic extends beyond what we had in January and February. In January, we had sequence chains. In February, we had agile frameworks and agile strategies. And now we're looking at first principles as our topic for this month. Now, digging into the books, I've continued working through them. The 177 Mental Toughness Secrets of the World Class by Steve Siebold. Objections by Jeb Blunt, which is actually a great book and really helps understand the whole process that we're going through, dealing with the mental state of the person across the table from us, the phone from us. And then Selling You by Napoleon Hill. I haven't really dug into Selling You, but I've continued working on objections and going through 177 secrets. That one I'm doing every single day. Objections, I'm spending at least an hour a day working through the content. For this week, our quote comes from Reed Hoffman, who is the founder of LinkedIn. He said, "You have to be able to take things apart and solve problems from the ground up based on fundamental principles." And when he's talking about fundamental principles, we're essentially discussing first principles thinking. So let's dig into that as a topic, because this is going to be something that's going to be very different. We talked about sequence chains being a straight line concept, putting pieces together as you go, and then those pieces will give you a more structured way of handling things. We know part A, then part B, and then part C, etc. In agile strategies, we do a lot of looping. We do a lot of building in small pieces and testing and checking and making sure they work right. But in first principles, the overview is it's mostly a creative strategy, especially if you don't know exactly what the end game is that you're going to be working from. You take what you know, break it down into simple pieces that you can guarantee, and then start thinking about it from those and seeing, based upon what I do know, what are my options for moving forward. Now, looking at first principles thinking, we're going to break it down into a basic strategy. Really, there's only three things you have to do. Number one, you analyze situations from the ground up. Very much like Elon Musk discusses this, you can't really look at the leaves and the branches until you understand how the trunk and the roots work and the major branches. Then you can start looking at these leaves. They're great to see, right? It's like in wintertime here, we don't have a whole lot of them. And in the summer, all the trees are full, and you know, it changes your perspective when you are driving around, because in the wintertime, you can see what's on the other side of a batch of trees. There's no leaves there. During the summer, the road closes in because the leaves completely obscure everything beyond it. So if you're trying to figure out what your options are and you're looking at your business for those options, you want to look at things from the ground up. What do we know about what's happening here? Number two, we identify the most critical factors at play. Now we're starting to prioritize. Okay, criticality and priority work as two different factors to establish what is important. This is something that I used a lot when I was back in the IT days, looking at criticality and impact to create the matrix, right? Is it only one person that's being affected? If so, what's the priority of that person? It's a lot different when the new person in a company is impacted by an outage. versus the CEO, for example. If the CEO is impacted, now we're dealing with VIP status. And so that bumps up the priority of what you're dealing with because the criticality of a CEO and the output of what they do is so much greater. So we're looking at critical factors at play. And number 3 is we devise solutions based on fundamental insights. What did we learn at the ground? How tall that tree is going to be is based upon its root base. There's an old story of trees that were so impregnable that they could withstand almost anything. They had high winds and everything. Scientists picked up and moved these trees to another area. And after about a year or two, the trees would fall over. And they couldn't figure out why. Well, the reason, as they discovered later on, was in the original place, that high wind forced the tree to only grow so tall, put down a longer root base and a wider root base, and then it could grow some more, and then it would put down a wider root base and a deeper root base, and this would continue. Where they moved them to had no such wind. So the trees themselves grew no deeper of a root base than they would naturally do. And of course, that wasn't enough, and all of a sudden the weight of the tree would be too much and the tree would fall over. The fundamental insight was what was the challenge that the tree was facing in its original place versus what it was in the new place. Like I said, analyze situations from the ground up, identify the most critical factors at play, and devise solutions based on fundamental insights. Something that somebody asked me one time is, I don't understand first principles. How does it kind of work? And like I said, it's kind of a creative process, but the way I kind of explained it is, it's a little like building with Lego bricks. Instead of following the instructions, dump all the bricks out and think, what's the coolest castle I can build with these? You break the problem down to the very basics and come up with creative solutions. In business, it means not just doing things because that's how they've always been done. It's really about understanding why you're doing something and then finding the best way to do it. Now, if we look at all 3 of these, sequence chains, agile strategies, and first principles thinking, they are all methods helping businesses solve problems and make decisions. It's not just businesses, but military as well. The fact is that all 3 of these are simply different paths to rebuilding the castle, winning the game, or throwing the best surprise party, whatever it is. The difference of these 3, sequence chains are all about following a set path. Agile strategies are like being a ninja ready to flip and change as you go. First principles thinking is like being an inventor, starting from scratch and creating something totally new. That gives you a perspective on how and when to use each of these strategies. And that's the reason why I brought this in as a concept for the whole quarter, is when to use it and how to use it. We'll be talking about how in just a second. Many times when we're going through and we understand the similarities and differences between something, what we really want to find out is what's the overall strategy in using it, right? What's the outcome style we're trying to achieve? Are we looking for responses to a problem? Are we looking at new ways to solve a problem? Or are we simply repeating the same problem in a similar way based upon what we need to do? That's how it kind of comes down. Now, I want to break out an example. A coffee shop that I used to go frequent, and I was talking with the owner, and they wanted to get consistently more customers and get them on a regular basis. That was their challenge. And I said, well, there are many different ways to go about this. How would you like to do it? Because what you're doing now, sequence chains, isn't really helping you. If we break this problem down into smaller pieces, what would that look like? What do customers really want from a coffee shop? And this brings in the question, do they want the service or do they want the product? And like a lot of businesses that are food service, product is the end result that somebody is paying for. But the experience, the service that they get, dictates many times how friendly and how enjoyable the experience was as a whole. Once we really broke that down, we understood that this was service and not coffee, right? Coffee was the product. It was a vehicle. That's really what it was. It was the vehicle to get to a positive experience. We said, yeah, there's great coffee. That's number one you got to have. But there's also higher visibility. And people are wanting a comfortable place to relax or work, and they also want fast, convenient service. So we all agreed that coffee is good, but the shop's atmosphere and the speed of service could be improved. And that's what we went after. My team took the time to look very carefully at adding additional pieces, not just those four things, not the coffee, the atmosphere, the speed, all the pieces that are there. Those are the three, but we also wanted the comfortable place to relax and work. Those four things, we had to look at this as a whole and break it out because we wanted to accelerate the sales, but also decrease the dedicated time people had waiting for a faster service. Taking a first principles approach meant that we started at a much more foundational level. And one of the biggest things was that people really didn't see the coffee shop. They knew that it was there if they stumbled across it, but it wasn't really visible. I brought in a signage company to redesign the exterior signage that was more visible and also pointed at all the approaches. There were 3 different ways to get to the coffee shop. The signage only focused on one, and it wasn't very good at that. They built a real eye-catching design and put it out on a monument sign that's actually out on the street. Plus, they also put lighted, it was very expensive, of course, to do all this, but they put lighted signs in close to all 3 of the entrances to come into the building. Then we approached the faster service process. We integrated an app into the point of sale system that they had so that regular customers could order and pay ahead and their drink would be ready when they arrived. If they wanted food, that would also be ready. And, we added in a little tracker they could kind of see what was happening. We brought in an interior designer to redesign the layout of the shop itself. We wanted to make it more welcoming and cozier, but there was another thing that we wanted. To support those people that were coming in on the app, we wanted to make sure that prepaid customers were given a dedicated pickup station for grab-and-go service. But we didn't just make the grab-and-go service, we actually made it independent of the regular ordering line. So these people could come in, get their drink, get their food, whatever it was, and they could either take it with them or they could sit down, and they were not encumbered by this long line of people that were just thinking about things and weren't really sure and were going to ask some questions. We added another little part to this little grab-and-go service, is that there were minor upsells for products that were available for purchase that they could then, while they're in the store, go back into the app and add them in, pay for them right there, and just get them so much quicker, right? No waiting for this big old long line. The last thing that we did is we installed a faster internet connection with a next generation firewall because we knew that we wanted to get a lot more business people into the store, and they were becoming much more security conscious. So now they could do their business work in the coffee shop, do it securely, and not have to worry so much about all of the craziness. I mean, everybody got a one-time password when they were joining the internet. Even if it was something that they came back later on and they went to the app and they opened it up and they wanted to connect, it would deliver them a one-time password. They punch in the password and boom, now they're on in a very secure manner. These were all done to make sure that the coffee shop stood out, that it started attracting more customers, that the customers they got, new or returning, were going to stay in the business longer and ultimately have a higher average purchase price per visit. This is how you use first principles thinking, is break it down to the elements of what are the problem you're trying to solve and really dig into that. That's how we brought this to focus. And it's a great example of first principles thinking, breaking down into the three factors: analyzing the situation from the ground up, identifying the most critical factors at play, and devising solutions based on fundamental insights. Next week, we're going to dig in and talk a little bit more about first principles thinking. We're going to start talking about at what point do you come into first principles thinking. Is it because you want to do something the same and you are needing more information? Or is it because you want to do something creatively? So that's enough for today. We covered all of our books. We got our Reed Hoffman quote. We went through our first principles strategies, dealing with an overview, the strategy itself, and a great example of how first principles thinking works. I'm going to go ahead and sign off for the day. This is Randy for the Budding Entrepreneur Podcast, wishing you the best in your health, your wealth, your business, your family, everything about you. Take care. We'll see you next week. Have a great week, everybody. Bye now.